just want to add to this idea of developing a relationship with your agent. So we've been told that really, depending on the kind of relationship you have with your agent, you can get a lot of feedback about what would go wrong with your application. You also have the choice of submitting a draft. Now, some people decide to just not submit a draft because it does take quite a while to get a response for your draft. It could take up to a year. But if you do submit a draft, you won't get rejected right away. You'll be told what's wrong with your application if there is a problem, or you'll be told your application is just fine. The other thing I want to emphasize about agents is, this is a bit of a funny segue, but notice the difference between Tier 1 and Tier 2 agents. So your Tier 2 agent is the agent that you're going to develop a relationship with. Your Tier 1 agent is the first person who answers the phone at Canada Revenue Agency, and I've been told a number of times that it's important to ask for a Tier 2 agent to speak more in detail about your application.
All right.
Yeah.
Literally ask for
a Tier 2
agent. Could I please
agent.
have a Tier 2 agent?
Exactly.
All right, okay. And then some organizations have certainly had to go the route of also consulting a lawyer. If there's some controversy around whether you are deemed acceptable to be a charitable organization, you may want to go the route of getting legal advice. And there are some lawyers that specialize in this area.
And I really want to emphasize that a lot of organizations don't use a lawyer.
Yeah. So that's one of the costs possibly if you need to go the lawyer route. And you really need to think it through in this stage in terms of that application and making sure that you put the right kind of energy into it. And you'll know fairly soon in talking to the CRA, Canada Revenue Agency, if your application is one of the more complicated ones or if it's fairly straightforward. And it doesn't cost anything directly to apply.
Absolutely.
You might have some costs associated with it in terms of things like lawyer fees, but not the actual application letter.
Yep. You might be making official photocopies of minutes. Photocopies don't cost that much. You might have to get certain things together for the application. But yeah, really the costs associated are more about legal consultation fees if you decide to go that route. The other thing that I wanted to just mention, Francis, is that we've really seen over the past few years, as you were saying, a lot of organizations are having trouble getting charitable status. And there's been a big lobbying movement to try to clarify and expand who can get charitable status. So in particular, groups that were working with ethnocultural communities were having a lot of trouble maintaining their charitable status or getting charitable status because it wasn't clear the difference between for example, working with people who are experiencing racism society, so it was okay to offer them services, but it wasn't necessarily okay to fight racism. This is one of the issues that we saw come up, that a lot of organizations have come together to fight and to work for clarity. And there was about a 4-year project with the Canada Revenue Agency through the Voluntary Sector Initiative, through Impacts, Institute for Media Policy, and Civil Society.
Right.
And over time, the Canada Revenue Agency has now really clarified what to do if you're an organization that's working with ethnocultural communities. And they actually have what I like to call a cheat sheet, which is a policy on the website where they tell you this is what it's okay to say if you're applying, and this is what it's not okay to say. So they're literally telling you the language to use in order to be eligible when describing your activities. And you'll find in the info sheet on charitable status that we have a link to that. And I've seen it work for people, and I strongly suggest that if you're working with ethnocultural communities, you check that out.
And if you're having trouble getting charitable status, it would be good for us to know about it because it's very good for us to know about the different kinds of cases and how they're moving forward. So we've applied.
Yes.
Holding our fingers, hoping we're going to get it. How long does it usually take before we hear if we've gotten charitable status?
This is going to be a little rough to say, but it can take anywhere from 6 months to 3 years. So it depends on what your application looks like. It's not really clear. There's a lot of discretion, so we're not exactly sure why one goes forward faster than the other. At the same time, we know there's a real backlog there, and there's a lot of applications going forward, so it might just be that they're a little overwhelmed and they're churning them out as fast as they can. It's not completely clear.
So this is also why often groups start applying for charitable status really close to the incorporation process, if that's the route that you're going to go, because it may take some time to get it. And if you're hoping to get some funding in place through one of the foundations, then you want to get that process going fairly early. But it's not a choice for everyone, so let's remember that also, that lots of us are functioning without charitable
status. So another point that I just want to emphasize is what happens once you have charitable status, and what are the limitations of charitable status. So there are certain bureaucratic requirements that come with having charitable status. One of them is that you need to every year submit a registered charity information return that requires something very close to an audit on a yearly basis of your organization. So you're incurring some costs there to maintain your charitable status. You're also limited in the type of board of directors that you have. So you can't have a board of directors that's made up entirely of your family, because people need to be at least 50%, more than 50% in a what's called a non-arm's length relationship. So not working together closely, not family, or not very close friends living at the same address. Another thing is that you'll be limited in the types of political activities that you can do. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, and that's a really important one to look at. I'm just wondering if we should maybe just a quick word, and then we have a whole video cast on that also. So the government has definitions for political advocacy work, and we can do lots of great advocacy work without falling in that definition and have a charitable number. But you have to be very aware of the limits of that, and there's only a certain percentage of your work that can be political advocacy.
Exactly. And that's a complicated policy that we're going to clarify a little bit more, as Frances said, in our own little segment. And feel free to watch it for more information. And the other thing I just want to emphasize, we talked about the idea that you have to have a charity information return every year, and you have to have something that's very close to an audit or an actual audit in order to maintain your charitable status and to fill out that return properly. The other thing is that throughout the year you'll be required to do a very accurate bookkeeping of what you're doing. So if you're giving out charity receipts, there's a specific way that Canada Revenue Agency says you need to keep track of those. You need to put photocopies, keep photocopies of them, have 2 copies of them. And these types of details that are explained much more in their guide, but do involve a bureaucratic burden that might mean that charitable status is not necessarily for you.
So there's lots of ideas to think about, and if you do have any more questions, feel free to contact us.
Thanks so much.